unique niche part of cybersecurity. And this recent study, we're trying to apply it to more of a sociological perspective, meaning that not just one person. How do we as a group, how do we as a community impact our cybersecurity posture? So let me set the tone by going a little bit back in the day. Back in the day, when we're talking back in the day, we're talking October 30th, 1938. The individual on the screen is Orson Welles. Orson Welles, he was a radio broadcaster, and on October 29th, he did a rendition of War of the Worlds. War of the Worlds is a fictitious book that many people read about an alien invasion in the United States. However, that night, Orson Welles gave the performance of a lifetime. And that performance of a lifetime caused mass hysteria to a point of unimaginable proportions. And when he woke up on October 30th, he looked at the newspaper and he saw this. And he saw that people actually believed that this was not an audio rendition of a fictitious book, but it was actually a radio broadcast that aliens were invading the United States. People began to believe that that was true, to the point where even the United States banned what they called fake radio alarms, which is still in place today. But it was Orson Welles. Orson Welles, it was not an actual radio alarm, it was an individual reading a book. On top of that, it was not just a random book, it was a popular book. In the popular book, he was reading over the airways, just caused mass hysteria. And now, still to this day in the United States, fake radio alarms are banned. And nothing like that can happen today, right? Oh, wrong. This is Operation Fish Fry. Operation Fish Fry is one of the few cyber attacks that caused the FBI to intervene. Operation Fish Fry was over 100 people in this group, and what they did, they targeted banks specifically, and they did this through emailing campaigns, through phishing campaigns. Over 100 people were arrested in Operation Fish Fry. And so this here is the FBI presentation on that. A little bit of background of how that happened. How does that stack up with Orson Welles? Step one is just some phishing emails, just like you would suspect, just a phishing email, some social engineering going on there. 91% of attacks, about now and today, 2020, about up to like 97, 98% of attacks come through email. They stole about 5,000 American citizens. They targeted 5,000 American citizens. So we're not talking the world here. We're just talking the U.S. at this point. Then they had about 100 people in on this operation. And then on top of that, they had people that would conduct the phishing attacks. They had people that were a part or runners from the phishing attacks to actually launder the money somewhere. And they all got about $1.5 million in this long, huge scheme that they had. And this Operation Fish Fry, when this was going on, this caused such mass hysteria. This was the launching point for email. Like that email was going to be a legitimate problem for us as cybersecurity professionals. From this moment forward, we're all living in our Orson Welles moment where you do not know if you can trust what you see within your email. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about people. It is an estimated that 90% of cyber attacks come from human error, come from just simply us making a mistake. And this is not just with email. We're just talking about in general. that how do we contribute to the problem? About 90% is us through email. From this moment forward, as we continue this conversation, from this moment forward, I want to pose to you, I submit to you all, that we stop thinking of cybersecurity as a technology-based science. My opinion, cybersecurity is a decision science. It's all based off the decisions that you are going to make, whether there's going to be a data breach today or whether there's not going to be a data breach today. All the way, even if it's technical, you start thinking about logs and reviewing your logs. Are you going to review your logs today? Or are you not going to review your logs today? That answer may vary based upon the day. Are you going to review the logs on a Friday? Most likely not. Read only Fridays. No one's doing any work on Fridays because you know you're going to find something bad if you look in the logs on Friday. Cybersecurity is a decision-based science. All right, human behavior. Your human behavior affects all the stages of cybersecurity, from design, implementation, evaluation, operation, maintenance, monitoring, revision, replacement, and training. The entire life cycle is impacted by human behavior. And as cybersecurity professionals, let me know if you have said something like this. You say, hey, if there's a data breach, it's not if, but when. However, we've moved from that to now it's not when, but how often. It's not when we're going to get a cyber attack, but it's how often are we going to suffer from data breaches? How often are we going to suffer from cyber attacks? Because it's undoubtedly going to happen. What has that started to do to us as a community? This is where the science comes in. Because when we start thinking about this, because we spend a lot of meetings like this where we end up preaching to the choir, but let's leave the choir, let's go to the pulpit. And so with this instance here, as we start talking about malicious threats and we start talking about cybercrime, this invokes fear, whether it's a small business owner or whether it's a large organization CEO. This invokes fear. And people begin to get intimidated by the conversation in which we're having. They're like, hey, don't tell me about when. Don't tell me when and how often we're going to have data breaches. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Tell me how we can fix this. And so we have invoked fear on the subject of doing this. So let's dig into this. So Garland, one of the major psychologists out there right now, someone I really look up to and admire, he says our fears and resentments, but also our common sense narratives and understandings become settled cultural facts that are sustained and reproduced by cultural scripts. So by us saying this cyber instance is fearful and that we are 100% scared of it, we have developed a culture. Culture is going to develop whether you do something or whether you do nothing. However, how reproducible it is based off how often are you doing the same thing. And now we have produced this cultural script that there is going to be cyber attacks. There are going to be lost records. There's going to be data breaches. And so this has become a part of our cultural script. We're going to nerd out for about 5 minutes here. Then we're going to be a little bit more relatable. But we'll have to provide some context about this from a nerdy perspective. I have to give you some context about this. All right. So I'm gonna read this. I apologize. I'm gonna read this to you. When it comes to cybersecurity, a stereotype that ferociously dominates this industry is that people are the weakest link and humans are the problem. The more we say this, the more we are undermining individuals and the less able they are to engage with what we're recommending. This phenomenon is in psychology is known as the Gollum effect. When we express low expectations of people, they will underperform and meet those low expectations. The opposite of the Gollum effect is the Pygmalion effect. When we express high expectations of people, they will perform better and they will meet those high expectations. So pretty much what we're talking about is self-fulfilling prophecy. When we're talking about we're going, you suck at your job, there's going to be data breaches, the logs, we're doomed, we're doomed, we're doomed. We're talking about self-fulfilling prophecy on a widespread sociological cultural perspective. This is what we are doing to all of us, from the choir to the pulpit. This is what we are doing. We set low expectations, and lo and behold, we are meeting every single one of those low expectations. And it is absolutely awful. I can only smile to keep myself from crying. But this is what we are doing. And so I went into 34 different organizations. I can't say which organizations I went into due to privacy concerns. However, what I observed initially was something called the Hawthorne effect. The Hawthorne effect is, we all seen it. So if you think back in the day when you're a kid, when you're a kid, your mom or your dad will walk in a room and you'll stop doing what you would normally do and you start acting right. You start acting right. That's the Hawthorne effect. Whenever you're being observed, things are going to change. So I did observe the Hawthorne effect. So by me sitting in these organizations, just monitoring and watching, things went better. So I had to stay in these organizations for a while. So this has been about 7 months of me sitting within various organizations to this Hawthorne effect and stop, meaning I become normal. And now that I'm normal, things started to happen. That's how my observations went. So when I was observing this, so after the Hawthorne effect, so after I became normal, I was a part of the organization, there is something that happened. So I broke this down to two psychological factors: a lack of understanding and someone being desensitized to what was going on. So I looked at this data and I interviewed people and I asked them, did they understand the technology? Do they understand the situation? Or are you desensitized to it? Do you just like not care as much as you possibly should care? So when when you're talking about cyber attacks, people are not vulnerable just from the lack of understanding, but some people had just become desensitized to the threat. So it's not the lack of understanding of what's going on. It's just the fact that you just don't even care no more. It's like, well, it's going to happen. So we just have to deal with it. If it's going to happen, does it matter if it happens on Monday, or doesn't matter if it happens on Thursday? That is part of it. So I looked at the data even more and I started to figure out, are we talking about an inside threat or not? Well, it's a different kind of inside threat. This is part of the study that I will have to say this is still bleeding edge research from me from a psychological perspective, where you start redefining inside threat. You start looking at someone that's not really trying to do anything malicious, but someone that has been desensitized to the point where it just doesn't matter anymore. And that person, in my perspective, is equally as dangerous because, like, hey, I got this email. Do I really care who it came from? It looks right. It feels right. So we're going to click on that. Or I'm not going to check the logs today because nothing's happened in the past 100 days. And if there is a data breach, who cares? It was going to happen anyway. Why be mad at me when it was going to happen? It could have been me, could have been Laura, could have been Greg, could have been Ryan, could have been Scott. Any of us, it just happened to be me. That person is equally as dangerous. It's a different way to observe an inside threat. Typically, we think of inside threats as someone that is trying to maliciously do something. However, this is a different style. This is how, and I'm gonna leave you guys with some notes here. This is how I say we should start perceiving risk. Risk is voluntary. Either you're just accepting by just doing risky things online. So you just completely don't care. You're volunteering yourself to the risk. You volunteer yourself for tribute, and you are engaging in known risky online activities. Involuntary is just you don't know that you're doing it, but you're doing it. Social engineering. Just think of that social engineering. You're being fooled to do something in which you didn't even know was going to be a risk. Familiar, something that you're familiar to, you can think of the media, the appearance in the media. Something that you're unfamiliar with, you don't understand the causation of it. So either you're familiar with it, like we know phishing's bad, you see the Nigerian prince email, you're very familiar with it, and so you know there's a risk there. Something you're unfamiliar with, it's a new zero-day attack, some new style like Microsoft Teams. They just recently had their wormable attack that was exploited out there. Something that is completely unfamiliar, you don't understand the cause, or you don't understand the consequence of the cause. Something you can control, something you cannot control, something you feel is fair, something you feel is unfair, or whether or not the risk actually causes dread to you. From a psychological perspective, I would highly encourage you all to go into your organizations and ask these questions and see how your team perceives risk. If it's familiar, if they're not familiar with the risk, that is completely different. This takes the blame out of it. You're just trying to figure out where they sit within this scale. The controllable and uncontrollable is where I'll find a lot of teams sticking. They feel, well, Scott set up our antivirus server, so that risk is controlled. So therefore, I'm reliant on the technology to contain that risk so I can operate however I want. That's not the way to do it. That's definitely not the way to act, because we know technology will let us down every single time if we allow it. Versus uncontrollable, if they feel if it's an uncontrollable risk, they will continue to just operate however they want. All right. When we combine this risk with trust, what happens? So how I define trust: the level of trust in an organizational body responsible for responding to the risk should be considered during both the policymaking and the communication process. I encourage, if you're a policymaker, if you're a policy writer, I encourage you to look at your policy and see how does that lie within trust and risk. Because if you do not, then it's pretty much all unsuccessful. What I put out is policymakers need to understand how people think about and respond to risk and materialize attacks, given without such insights or awareness of efforts might be unsuccessful. If people do not feel that they can trust the technology, all things are going to go wrong. If people feel like they could trust the technology too much, same thing. Everything bad's going to happen. So this is an example of it. This is an actual response from one of my research participants. So I conducted a phishing campaign, and 77% all had a sociological response to the message. One participant, and I'll never forget this interview, she let me know, well, the message appeared to come from the CEO, and that's a person I would not want to mess with or disappoint. This is a risk and a trust factor that has to be patched only from a psychological or sociological perspective, especially in times of 2020, where everything's just kind of thrown in the air and layoffs are a real thing. People are struggling. And if you're not struggling, people are fearful that they will be struggling fairly soon. This is an attack vector that is founded solely on trust and solely on the person. I spoke to the CEO and I asked the CEO, hey, can you post something out there, because people are scared of you and they're scared of this situation. And it doesn't matter if it's me now or if it's someone else later, that attack vector is going to stay open, and you need to fix that. This and trust proved to be the foundation of the rest of it. Let's get into the sociological perspective. Let's pull back out. All right. So behavior and control. From a sociological perspective, most of us think of this way. And I say most of us because there might be one or two somewhere out there that will highly disagree and prove it. However, the social concept of perceived behavioral control consists of two factors: self-efficacy and the ability to control, to the extent to which performance depends exclusively on the individuals. What that means is when individuals can determine or influence what is happening to them or what will happen to them, these individuals are considered to be under control. People, we want to be under control. We want to have control of the situation. Let's put that in the cyber. Let's go back and think about what, from a sociological perspective, of what we're doing. It's not a matter of if, but when, and it's not even a matter of that. It's a matter of not when, but how often. We are not in control. None of your users may feel like they are in control. And because they are not in control, what are they doing? And from a cyber perspective, this is one of the largest findings that I have is, since we are not in control, since we have to just jump on this roller coaster, strap in, they're going to press the button, and we're just all along for the ride. Since you are not in control, since you cannot influence the outcome, what in the hell are you doing? That sunk in once I'm digging through this info. That sunk in deep. Led me to this, because when you are not in control, we've seen that. When you have a cyber attack, something like ransomware come up, you went from kind of being in control, where we feel like we can't control this outcome, to completely out of control. At that moment in time where you have a ransomware attack, you are completely out of control, and it feels like someone else is under control. Meaning in this instance where it's the attacker, where it's the cyber criminal, and that ransomware feels like they have 100% control. Since this is the environment in which we're in, where do we start? What I encourage you to do, and let me know if you do it, is what I'm calling cyber sociological appraisals. Understand your organization's sociological tendencies. How do you do this? Like, you're talking people, and every single person's different, and you're thinking about your organization, and you may be thinking like, okay, we got to get this under control. We are in control. Our users are in control. Have we empowered them to feel that way, that they can impact the outcome, if they can influence the outcome? Or do they feel like they are sitting on this roller coaster waiting for the cyber attack, and whoever's holding the hot potato, that's the person going to get fired? It's no way to work under, it's no way to feel, but this is our reality. All right. We're going back in the day to Rogers' 1975, something called protection motivation theory. Protection motivation theory, it goes to, there's two processes. You have a threat appraisal, you have a coping appraisal. For cyber, I say we do both. The threat appraisal evaluates the factors associated with the behavior that potentially creates danger, including intrinsic and extrinsic rewards accompany those actions, the severity of the danger. So the threat appraisal is the behavior of what's bad going to happen. A coping appraisal evaluates one's ability to cope with or avert the threat and danger. So Colorado Springs is a huge DoD town. And so I'm gonna talk DoD for a second, if you understand. If not, I will flip it and we'll do the same analogy somewhere else. In the military, or in any government organization, at some point in time, you may have to get a security clearance. In that security clearance, what they're doing, they would run a background check. What a deep background check. If you were to get a new job, not in DoD, they might run a background check on you. And because they're running a background check, why are they doing that? They just want to see possibly a credit score to base your behavioral trends and kind of where you are in, are you worthy of getting the security clearance, or are you too risky to hire for this potential job if it's just a normal background check? That is the only time we really do a threat appraisal. And we're talking people and we're talking things change. My attack vectors today might be different from 5 years from now. And in this current environment where things are definitely not certain, I say we need to start doing threat appraisals on our people, not just a background check. I mean, small, just interview, see how someone's doing. Because all of that changes, because you might be in control today and they just might be completely out of control the next day. How to do so? When you have a threat appraisal, you're trying to find out how susceptible someone is to a threat. In us, we're talking cyber. How susceptible is someone to a cyber threat? Meaning, how vulnerable is an individual by the possibility of becoming a victim of a cyber attack, such as phishing? If it's easy for phishing, such as phishing. And what are those current attack vectors? I mean, you could simply do a personality assessment. That's what we're doing this next research study. We're doing a bunch of personality tests, all the popular ones, like the Myers-Briggs and all that, to see like what INTJs, what are they more, how do they categorize when phishing versus extroverts and things like that. We're going to break it down all Myers-Briggs style in the Enneagram, just have all those broken down so we can kind of get a better understanding of those people and those personality traits and what cyber attacks are they more likely to be victimized to. However, in your organization, you could do the same thing, a simple personality assessment or a simple conversation to see, is this person in a position to be a victim for phishing? If so, we need to do something about it now. We need to be proactive instead of reactive. If you're doing a coping appraisal, the coping appraisal evaluates the factors of a person that are likely to ensure they are going to engage in the recommended response that is preventative in nature. So your threat response is how likely are they to fall victim to a phishing attack. The coping response is if they fall victim to a phishing attack, are they going to say something or are they going to say nothing? Because if you're the one to get caught with the hot potato in your hand and you're fearful for your job, you are going to say nothing. You are like, well, it could have been anybody. And being a cyber professional, but much like pretty much everyone in this room, I'm assuming, attribution's impossible, man. Like it is so hard to find out who actually did what. And because it's hard to find who actually did what and no one's saying anything, we're just sitting here like, all right, so here's Data Breach Wednesday. How the hell did this happen? And we start digging, trying to find some breadcrumbs for attribution. So your threat appraisal, it's different for each person. It's the same actions, but may be different for each person. How susceptible is this person to this attack? The coping appraisal, are they going to engage in the recommended response that are in the policy? Are they going to follow policy or are they not going? Are they going to go into survival mode? Hey, yeah, Data Breach Wednesdays is the thing. So coping appraisals, we just went over it. This is an individualized approach. This is an individualized approach. You want to make sure everyone is treated the same. However, they might be in a different point. If you're Maslow's hierarchy, are they at self-actualization or are they just looking for job survival at this point? This is a way we can help our users feel they are in control. They can influence the outcome because we know they can. If human error is the number one problem, is 90% of the data breaches, that means we can influence 90%. I feel for them. You know, this the large cybersecurity organization that just got hacked by a nation state. I feel for them because there's not much you can do there. But nation states coming at you, a nation state's coming at you. But in a state where, like Wyoming, where's a whole bunch of small businesses, you can influence the 90%. If you don't feel like you can influence the 90%, we as a cybersecurity community, and I take full responsibility for my share as well, where we're just like, hey, it's just going to happen, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I think we've all said that we're contributing to a larger sociological problem where it's just like, dude, there's nothing we can do. And we ask, why do you feel like there's nothing we can do? There's nothing we can do because we've told you there's nothing you can do about it. That's the craziness that we're feeling. And Jim, Data Breach Wednesday comes after patch. It should be 0-day Wednesday after Patch Tuesday. That's what it should be. Yeah, it's unfortunately. It says the individual should also be convinced they are capable of engaging in the behavior that would only cost them expected amount of terms of expended effort. If it's too hard, then they're probably not going to do it. If it's in the policy and they can actually do it and they feel like they are under control, they will most likely do it. Structure your policy in that way from a sociological perspective. Make people feel like they can influence the outcome of a data breach. Let them and put them in position to be successful in doing that. All right, to break this down in as simple way as I possibly can. So to put this in perspective, when individuals are afraid of a major cyber attack and realize that a reaction could effectively prevent that threat, they are motivated to control the risk. This control process could begin with the thinking about strategies to tackle the threat, reduce the impact of the corresponding risk on their lives. When the control procedures dominate, people may arguably react to danger and not fear. You want people to react to the danger of a cyber attack, not just be fearful of a cyber attack. Much like when you're going camping, like, because I enjoy camping. If you're going camping, I understand there's the danger of animals in the wilderness that are out there. But if I operate complete under fear of being outside, there's a completely different biological reaction that I'm gonna have. I'm not going to operate in my sane mind. If there's danger, I understand there's danger, so I will accept the acceptable risk and do the acceptable control measures to do that. If it's just fear, it's like, man, when is it going to happen? And when this bear attack is going to happen, it's going to happen to me. It's because I just know it is. This is what we need to do. And so Reeve, he conducted a study that I'm including in this as well. Says, considering our case of cyber attacks, another example would be that victims of fraud and computer misuse have been victimized before, might take measures to avoid becoming victims again in the future. The vast majority of victims of fraud and computer misuse have only been victimized once, with a small portion saying that they have suffered 2 or more times. Statistics support the claim, indicating that users can quickly learn from their mistakes when they become victims of computer crime. This is true. What we are attempting to do, what I'm attempting to do, what I encourage you all with the few nuggets I gave to attempt to do, is to prevent people from touching the hot stove before they know the stove is hot. We all don't need to become victims of computer fraud to know computer fraud is bad. There's a way to do it. All right. Individual factors that may happen. Intelligence, how, whether it's reasonable ability and analytical skills, we're not talking technical skills. We're just talking making sure someone's cognitively sane in their mind. Their personality, obviously everyone's different. Social abilities, technical abilities, which is hands-on keyboards intelligence, and technology dependence. All of these factors may play deeply into how often someone may become a victim. Where are they at in their threat appraisal on their victimization? Will they be a victim right now? How these are different. If they're extremely intelligent and very analytical, obviously that falls low based on personality, but they're an extrovert and they want to talk to everybody, they even want to talk to strangers, that bumps up a little bit. Their social abilities, if they're socially awkward or if they don't understand social constructs and that they are talking to a stranger online, obviously the threat goes up a little bit. If they do not understand the technology they're using at all, the threat could go up a little bit. And if they're totally reliant on technology in order to do their job or in order to communicate, they're totally reliant, that means they're always communicating online, which pretty much we all are now. But because we're all technologically dependent, obviously the threat goes up a little bit. So that's how all of these weigh. All of these factors weigh individually on the person. Biological factors is the human vulnerability, in which I spoke with Laura and a few others were there. Sorry if you were there and I don't remember your name, I apologize. But the cyberpsychology behind it, the human vulnerability, the biological factors, your personality, your brain, and how you think, those are factors of influence, and the external factors as well. The future of your SOC relies on training, not on just technical stuff. I encourage you to think, how can we better understand our behavior to better protect our data? Training is not just, hey, here's a phishing attack. Let me show you this phishing attack. Let's go through this phishing campaign. And because you clicked on it, you have to sit through this training. And because you're sitting through this training, now you're good to go. That's not how it is. It's the why. The why these people clicked on that is what reigns more profound to me. Here's the numbers from the data. The pending publication and organizational approvals. There's 33 organizations in the Midwest with an average of 52 employees. I engaged in a phishing campaign, custom tailored to either reveal PII or EPHI or get admin level access. At that point, as soon as I saw those, I tapped out and said, hey, I got you. 100% success rate within 37.4 days of initiation. So a little over a month, 100% success rate. I conducted post-mortem interviews, post-study interviews, and I asked semi-structured questions, semi-structured interview questions, meaning I asked them an open-ended question and I let them speak to their heart's desire. I did not tell them to stop. I did not tell them what to say. I did not say A, B, or C. It was just tell me your story, and they spoke for however long they want. Interviews range from 15 minutes up to 3 hours. So there was a wide range, but we got a ton of good data. Some of the example probing statements was describe your thought process before clicking, explain your emotional state when you saw the statement, reduction in force, detail your relationship with the CEO, executive director, your supervisor, etc. I was given permission to reveal some of the statements there. And so one person says, well, to be honest, the CEO kind of scares me. I was afraid of losing my job. I really needed to land the sale. I heard that a bunch of times. I really needed to land the sale. All of these responses here, none of them were technologically founded. None of these, I would say, if you train them on the technology, they would do better. They're all psychological or sociologically founded, where, hey, you have to do more than technology to patch these up. So I would say we must address the human vulnerability, not just only at the psychological level, but the sociological level. We have to look at us as a group, as a conglomerate. How are we structuring our policies? Are we enabling people to be them best selves within the policies? And by be them best selves, I'm not talking about just be happy. I mean, engage in the behaviors we want them to engage in. Are we setting up the tone for everyone to feel like they can impact the outcome of a data breach? Even our non-technical employees, do they feel like they can impact the outcome of a data breach? Even if the data breach happens and they believe the data breach will happen, if they feel like they could be a team player and impact the outcome of it, then they are in control. And because they are in control, they can drive the organization forward. If they feel that only we are in control and they're along for the ride, then how it's like, hey, I'm just buckling up. You guys are controlling the data breaches, right? Like, no, that's not it. We know there's a lot more to this than just the technology. And if we don't do that, we will never have an effective patch. There will always be the data breach Wednesdays and then the 0-day Sundays, like Jim was alluding to. There will always be the 0-day Sundays. These are issues that we must be able to address. Behavior drives decision making, and cybersecurity is a decision making science. Thank you.
That is really good, Erik. Thank you so much for sharing your research with us. What questions you guys have, feel free to unmute or pop them in the chat, either way. Have you guys, so I want to share a little bit of Erik's old research too while you guys are unmuting. One of the things that he said at the cybersecurity conference a couple of years ago was that the #1 reason people click is impulsiveness. Impulsivity, is that what you called it, Erik?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so I started thinking about that from an HR perspective. And one of the things that that I thought of is if I'm an HR director ever, one of the things I'm going to ask is, do you impulse buy at Walmart in the checkout line? Because if you do, I'm not going to hire you.
Yeah, the more impulsive someone is, you don't have to fool them as much like a car salesman or something. I don't have to tell you every cool feature. Just got to tell you a couple of them and you're going to buy it.
Right. Exactly. And, you think about also, you could also put it in technology terms. You always know the person, the first kid on the block, I guess, that buys, the brand new, iPhone or the brand new this or the brand new that, right? And they always have to have the newest car and the newest this or that. I mean, that could also lead towards impulsiveness.
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, John put one in the chat for you.
Is there a company level that clicks more than other, or is there a personality type that is more at risk? We're breaking everything down into specific personality types, but I can give you behavioral characteristics. So the more impulsive you are, that is the most likely someone is to be at risk. Also, the more extroverted someone is, the more likely he or she is to click. Because they're willing to communicate with strangers and communicate with outsiders. But for company size has varied greatly because the attack vector for a small business is way tougher to put in perspective from like a multinational organization with a much larger attack surface. So there is I don't know if you're talking company size or the level someone is in the company. So company size is kind of apples and oranges there, but the level that the person is all depends on their personality types. And you're right, introverts do, we don't talk to anybody anyway. And mostly a lot of cyber professionals, stereotypically, we're all introverts. So that's kind of why we feel safer, because we don't talk to anybody and I don't want to talk to anybody anyway. But outside of presenting research. So yeah. Oh, entry-level employee versus top-level managers. Right now, as of right now, there is, it's between, as we're crunching data, it's between 67 and 71% of executives that click, and 45 to 54% of mid-tier and entry-level employees that we get to click. So there seems to be a discrepancy there. But when it comes to sales, it doesn't matter. Like if it sells, it's like an 80% click rate. Because if I say, hey, we want to buy ABC Incorporated's widgets, a salesperson is going to respond. It's almost guaranteed.
That's disturbing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So is that the same phishing scam for both the executive level and the entry level person? Or are you doing different phishing scams for them?
It was the same. We casted a broad net.
Okay.
We casted a broad net. I haven't crunched the data to look at kind of why would a entry level employee respond to this. There are some emails where I would state that it wasn't really a fair fight for like the entry level because it just looked awkward. Like an entry level employee getting an invoice from an organization that typically wouldn't sit right. So that would raise any red flag to an entry level employee. When an executive will be more prone to react to that type of attack.
Right.
So after you finish crunching these numbers, your next step is to go on to the personality test and the Myers-Briggs and stuff. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. So we're partnering up with a Myers-Briggs organization, and we're partnering up with the organization that runs Enneagrams, because those are the two most popular, to see how we can fit employees and have people take Enneagram. So we're going to be asking for participants, if you're willing, just take the Enneagram, give us your results back, and sometime within the next 8 to 10 months, you're going to receive like a phishing scam or something along the lines, a bunch of them, and you're not going to know it, because we need to get out of the Hawthorne effect where they're like, hey, I'm going to get fished. I'm going to get fished. We need everyone to get back comfortable, and then we're going to start phishing, and then we'll give everyone their results back.
You know, I probably can recruit some people from Wyoming through the competition for you.
I would love that.
Because we have about, maybe 35 past participants that would probably be really interested in using that to test their skills and what they've learned. So
that would be great. That would be great. And so if they're willing to, we'd love to have them. We do promise anonymity, that we'll just say the personality traits. Obviously, as a researcher, I can only go as far as my word. So if I start posting out, hey, Laura did this and clicked on this, like, no one's like, no, I don't want to participate in your research. So we do promise anonymity, but we will share the personality traits and what they're most likely to click on.
that's fascinating. And I forgot to ask you, is it okay that if I recorded your part of the presentation and I put it up on the Wyoming ISSA Google Drive for sharing, or is it not okay?
No, it's totally fine.
Okay.
Totally fine.
If it wasn't, I was just going to delete it. So
no, totally fine. Hey, I would love to. And if anyone wants to chat, I'm here for it.
Great. Are there any other questions for Dr. Huffman?